Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. I wanted to bring back the Path to Pally experience for you guys, and I wanted to take it up a notch. One thing that you guys will learn about me that I am very excited to share my passion with would be playing a game like Final Fantasy XIV and taking it to another level. That's through parsing and through optimizations and things of that sort. So definitely understand that what I'm about to show you today is my method and how I was able to get a 99 plus parse on one of the most recent fights that came out, which was E5S. This one has been a lot of fun. It has its frustrating moments here and there that are a little bit more difficult, but if you can actually pull this out of your hat, you are more than likely to pull out a very nice number coming out of that fight. So what you're going to see is a pre-recorded video of my attempt at getting high optimized performances out of E5 Savage. It is important to note that knowledge of the fight's mechanics is imperative to fully understand preemptive setup for this fight. As a paladin, I recommend having the role of off-tank, as some skills benefit you from not losing health for increased potency, an example being Spirits Within. Having a muscle memory mastery of the standard rotation of Paladin is also key for this fight, as you will need to be able to prioritize the fight's movements to firmly fit your rotation without error. Click on the top right card for a video that will explain on the standard rotation for Paladins. I know, shameless plug. Lastly, understand at this point in time I am fairly geared and one or two items away from being best in slot geared. The weapon really does play a strong role in getting more DPS, so if you aren't geared, do not expect as consistent of numbers of DPS that I was able to obtain, but that does not change the style of obtaining multiple orange 95 percentile runs. Our markers are set up for a reason. The overall goal of optimization is to minimize movement and obtain 100% uptime while not fully abandoning mechanics of a fight. The corner markers A through D are set up to allow us to stay within melee range of the boss. At the beginning of the fight, we have a 15-second countdown, and during this, I precast Divine Veil, as every fight this tier starts off with red-white damage. The purpose of giving mitigation is not only to help the party take less damage, but also to allow healers to focus less on healing and more on DPS. Team application is just as important as individual performance for a paladin, because in most cases where you have 100% uptime, the longer a fight goes on, the less likely you are to maintain a high number, especially if your rotation is front-loaded with high crits. Damn you, RNG! TLDR, DPS from everyone is important. Make sure that you have the boss targeted by countdown number 5, because when 2 seconds are left, you will want to begin casting a free Holy Spirit that will hit right when the countdown finishes, meaning you won't pre-pull early because it lines up perfectly. Followed up by the Holy Spirit, I dash in using Intervene and start using the normal rotation. I prioritize the use of Spirits Within heavily this fight. When he casts Stratosphere summons and the rods show on the platform, I like to grab 1 to 2 orbs early in preparation for Judgment Jolt later on. You'll note that my rotation is in the Requiescat portion, meaning that I will be casting 4 Holy Spirits before casting Confiteor. This allows me to disengage from the boss to position for the mechanic while also maintaining GCD uptime. This is all happening while I'm moving for orbs as well, so plan your orb acquisition and prep for the movement to the safe corner. After Judgment Jolt concludes, you can move forward and intervene to get back to the boss while keeping the Holy Confiteor cast going, as this will allow you to maintain uptimes for your auto attacks. The next mechanic is an Executor Summons, which is the annoying bird that chases the person with the highest orb count. Before the cast is finished, I obtain the 3rd orb and final orb. This is recommended only because any team can make mistakes by obtaining an extra orb due to their pathing or any other reason that can cause them to die when they don't realize that the bird is going to go to them instead of the off-tank. By having 3 orbs, I ensure that getting the bird tether is 100% secured and I can continue preparing to kite the bird. I stay close by the boss and my pathing is tight, avoiding orbs while also making sure the bird isn't too close to auto me. I typically move in a box-like formation away from it, around the boss. As I'm kiting the bird, I cast 1 defensive cooldown, preferably Rampart, as it will last all the way past the tank buster coming from the bird. And if you are keeping uptime properly and performing the rotation correctly with 2.4 GCD, I would get the tank buster marker to appear right before I use Riot Blade, leading into fight or flight window. It is at this GCD that I pop 1 Sheltron for additional mitigation. Following the pop of Fight or Flight, I relentlessly spam the Spirits Within button, hoping I will execute it before the tank buster hits for the extra potency, leading that into my Goring Blade. That topped off with a potential crit really helps your DPS. The first bird tether drops quickly after the tank buster resolves, so I can relax my pathing and just ensure that I'm really close to the boss for Stormcloud. My team handles this mechanic by having all the ranged DPS and healers on a designated letter marker, while the tanks and melee get a designated number marker. Make sure you're not on top of another person, as this will give you a paralysis buff, which will affect your rotation, resulting in overall less DPS. I stay on the marker until the cloud pops the debuff off of me, and then I position myself in a cardinal position. 2 important things are about to happen here. 1, you're about to go into your Requiescat combo, and 2, the boss is about to perform a knockback mechanic. In this part, I weave Requiescat into arm's length, and then Holy Spirit. This allows me to maintain autos on the boss and continue my rotation on the boss for more uptime. There's little to worry about here other than whether or not the boss will perform a short or long knockback, so it's just your standard uptime at this point. Make sure you are on the side that the main tank is on, because the boss will go to the main tank and you will lose uptime if you're on the opposite side of the platform. If your main tank positions effectively, you should be able to get to the correct spot and keep your rotation going. Being at 2.42 GCD, I was able to get all of my atonements off before the knockback occurred. And my global cooldown was cycling, so it was perfect time to let it recharge while I was locked by the knockback animation. Fight or flight window was approaching, so I held my spirits within for 1 GCD so that I could fit it into the buffed window. By the time Judgment Jolts was casted, I preemptively set my pathing to allow me to get 2 orbs while the main tank was repositioning the boss. The reason for this is because the mechanics go from the Vault into Thunderstorm, and then Executive Summoners number 2, which means that you're going to have at least 1 orb stack because of Thunderstorm, meaning to ensure you're not getting outstacked by another member, having an extra here means you won't have to go out of your way later. And since the pathing of the boss allows you to get orbs and keep uptime, it was the better choice to get more earlier. I get the closer orbs that are near the boss so that I am at 3 and begin kind to add like before. There's only one small caveat behind my pathing this time, and that's because of stepped leader. I bring the ad closer to the boss from the side that it spawns on, either from where the main tank is positioned at or where all the other DPS are positioned. Once that step leader is being casted, I pop Rampart and move to the other side, creating distance from the bird. This allows me to stack with one of the 2 groups, making the overall area that is not safe from step leader to be less. It is also a good idea to be stacked there, as it's less chaotic as a result. I had to adjust a bit because one of our DPS ended up being on the side that I normally go to, so it was a little spicy, but I adjusted in time. Tank Buster marker came up, so I just had to stay still and just make sure I popped mitigation like Sheltron to bolster my survivability. Tank Buster resolves, and then the Volt happens shortly after, so I add another cooldown like Sentinel before they both resolve to add that extra bit of mitigation. The bird hangs around a little bit longer, so I have to make sure I continue moving a little bit extra. Furious 14 mechanic is next, and because of my role, I am the one handling the action event first, so I save my hollow ground here specifically for that. Although it is risky, when he dashes, I believe it is possible to hit 1 more GCD before handling the event action. I choose not to, only because I feel the mechanic is finicky, and sometimes, even though I hit the event action, it still doesn't register it being done correctly. Could be a snapshot, could be a server tick, I'm not entirely sure. I don't wait for the boss to show up and dash to him, but instead walk to where the team is knocked back because my fight or flight window is about to occur, which means I can use the intervenes as more of a DPS measure instead of a gap closer. This step leader that comes up next is about to be a donut AoE, so it's not mandatory for the team to be stacked, but it doesn't hurt. I just stand behind the boss with any other like-minded DPS and continue the rotation. The way our group handles chain lightning doesn't involve interaction for me, but in the event one person dies, I can be a replacement for them. I position myself on top of the main tank to allow the 2 teams to have as much space to do chain lightning. The main tank buster is an AoE, so me standing on top of him doesn't hurt me at all. Roughly by the 7th or 8th chain lightning, I start pathing myself to start stacking orbs because Executive Summons is next. This one is the 3rd one and the hardest part for all off tanks, and it will really show you why Paladins are amongst the best for this particular mechanic. I move in the same formation around the boss, avoiding Thunderstorm AoEs, including the ones that are placed on the players. I stay close until my rec combo is activated, and then I move away from almost everyone in a large outer area box rotation. I would advise that if you're going for the tippy top for optimization, then you want to stay close to the boss for auto attacks, but to make it easier for the team, I moved out instead. Once again, make sure you put out enough mitigation as the 2 big mechanics are occurring: Tank Buster from the bird, as well as Thunderstorm. So if you need to, put Rampart and Sentinel along with Sheltron into use. The 3rd iteration of the bird lasts even longer than the 2nd one, and pretty much throughout the Thunderstorm mechanic, so don't forget to keep moving. The bird disappears right as Step Leader resolves, so just make sure you keep your range in mind. At this time, second 14 is occurring, so I grab an orb to make sure it will last the end of the whole mechanic. The pot cooldown should be up by now, but I refrain from using it and save it for close to the end of the fight because it allows me to end on a spike window. Our positioning for 14 is set up to allow the 2 melee to be close to the boss, followed by the tank, and then ranged DPS, and lastly healers. This is for uptime for the melee. Since I'm in my rec combo, I'm not bothered by the distance as much, but I do drop 1 Holy Spirit to allow me to use Confiteor before the boss becomes untargetable. If I didn't, I would lose Confiteor as a result. Confiteor over Holy Spirit, for lack of better words. Charge Judgment Volt occurred for us afterwards, which I didn't have an orb for, but thanks to tank privilege, I didn't die, only obtaining a vulnerability up, which doesn't hurt my DPS. If possible, try to get an orb, but don't go too far out of your way for an orb if it results a drop in your rotation by at least maybe 2 to 3 GCDs plus. Storm Cloud occurs again, but I had to adjust because the main tank wasn't in the right position, and thankfully the other DPS noticed and we split the area for each other. I then go to my number mark to get hit by the cloud, dropping my debuff, and then arm's length for the pushback that's going to happen just like before. Now, I should have popped my pot earlier since the boss was at 7%, and the reason for this is so that it busts my royal authority as well as everything else afterwards, but due to the mechanic hiccup, it slipped my mind. I realized this after the royal, and I used it then shortly afterwards. Continue the rotation, the boss casted one more Judgment Volt, followed by Chain Lightnings. I go to the main tank's position like before, but because the boss is within 1% or 2 of dying, I start to pop all my off-global cooldowns while going through royals. As a note, I would like to add, if a boss is close to dying within 4 to 7 GCDs, reapplying Goring will not be as strong as performing another set of atonements, so keep that in mind when you're getting to the last portion of the fight leading up to the boss's death. The ending result of the overall fight left me with a performance that was number 16 currently worldwide. I hope you guys enjoyed this guide to E5S, a Path to Pally. I hope it really helps you out in your endeavors, and I hope you get even better optimization runs and things of that sort. I do have more planned for you guys in the near future, and I want to thank you guys for taking the opportunity just to see what this is all about. If you want to see some of this content in live form, as well as any other game that I play whenever I'm feeling like it, make sure you check into the link in the description for my Twitch channel, which is at twitch.tv/SoulSaint with a 0, as well as some other information that you guys can probably come and follow me through. I love you guys. I'll see you next time, and stay ascended.